One sec. One sec. One sec. Almost ready to go. Filibuster, 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 filibuster. Okay, and now I just do this. And all right, Dr. Avi, thank you for coming up real quick. We were about to have a phone call, and I realized it might be useful to stream our conversation because I understand you listened to at least some of the debate and you have some thoughts about it. And I think it's useful to talk to you to chat. So yeah, why don't we have it?
I well, I listened to the debate.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, you guys needed a mod or something. You needed some kind of bridge. You guys were screaming at each other and talking past each other a lot of times. I'm not sure if you guys disagreed at many points or if you were just using different semantics. I don't think there was a lot of linearity in the discussion. I don't
agreed.
think you guys finished off points before going on to something completely different. And then from there it's the same thing, going on to different from that and that, never getting back to the any resolution of any other point. And
Yeah,
there were
no,
some
yeah.
parts where I wonder if there were some personal undertones that were just motivating this whole thing, because I don't know if this whole thing was just like in the people just screaming at each other over something, certain points that were so abstract, but I guess that's a different whole can of worms.
Yeah. So let's get into it. So I first of all, I think I agree with a lot of your characterization. I don't think it was very linear. I think that there is like certainly I will admit readily there's hard feelings on my behalf because basically take my approach, right? My view is that we have been unfairly smeared as like tankie adjacent in the sense of that we support tankies, that we support Marxist Leninists, that we largely support kind of illiberal anti-constitutional ideas, and this has seeped in and basically infected like major parts of I take like my stream and constantly being having to feel these issues of like, do you like Hassan, do you not like Hassan? So for me, there seems to be, or I'm perceiving a sense of intentionality behind it, and I am taking it personally. So if that show that is what I feel, and so I'm not lying about that. I think that there's personal stuff on his side too, that have to do with other things, other matters. But yeah, no, I think that you're correct about that. I was frustrated by the lack of linearity because ultimately I think that linearity would expose that there's not much substantive disagreement. That's at least my inclination. But yeah, so I don't take much issue with your characterization.
Before I go into like a specific thing, do you have any idea if if he's smearing, do you have any idea if he's being dishonest and he's smearing you, and if there's like a personal thing, do you have an idea of why he would do that?
I
What's
don't know.
motivating?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's this feeling, if I'm just being totally honest, that
Mhm.
like I'm a traitor. That when I took a step away um, from Stephen, from collaborations, friendly collaborations with Stephen, that was either something I should not have done, or that that it's super negative that I did that, or it's not understandable, or that I'm a bad friend because I did that. And I think that those feelings are very much at sort of at issue.
You're talking about when this whole thing happened with with the Pixie stuff, or with
Yeah, and
the
I'm for reasons that I still maintain, I don't like want to get in like give my take and opinion beyond what I've already said on those matters, and that again is out of respect to the parties, and also the fact that like the fact that I am a lawyer and people might take like I think improper weight to what I say one way or the other. I just didn't think it's appropriate to speak out, and I haven't made content out of it. That again out of respect for both parties and the role that I occupied in that kind of DNC lead up type thing, and not wanting to unduly prejudice either party. Yeah, I think that is an understandable thing for someone to do, and it feels like it leaves both sides, I guess, feeling angry
yeah,
that I don't have a stronger statement one way or the other, or that like I abandoned too quickly or something.
gotcha. Okay. Now I'll just say, just for the record, I don't know much about the backstory. So I can't really comment about who's right or who's wrong on any of that, because I don't really know what the whole Pixie situation was. I haven't really dug into that. I just know there is a situation, and I know some vague stuff about it, and I know like there was like all sorts of like fallout from that. So okay, I'm just trying to get your position. So I can't really comment on like whether you're right or not, or whether he's right about that. But I could understand what you're saying and what he
Yeah.
might say and what he's saying, and I could try to bridge a communication or
But
something.
either way, that I think officially has
Mhm.
nothing to do with like what the debate proposition, to the extent that there was a proposition,
Right.
was about.
You're saying that in terms of about like
I'm I'm
why they're
I'm speculating that there's a lot of
yes,
negative feelings that don't actually have to do with my stated views at all. And I think that people
right.
like the notion that the kind of statements I make that people are interpreting as being pro tanky or tanky apologists, the notion that in an objectively an objectively rational person could not take, I think, my statements to indicate like an allegiance to tankyism, or that I'm going to like become a tanky or anything like that. I think it's absurd, but that perhaps I'm speculating that this has to do with a lot of with the feeling, and
Let me ask
it's
you a question.
yeah.
At any point in the debate, did anyone like outline definitions or like clarity about like or concept conveyance of what exactly a tanky is?
Yeah, no, I think that it was kind of vaguely alluded to as having something to do with like violent revolution, perhaps, with some understanding of like lack of rights, but that wasn't fully understood or defined. So no, I don't think that it was. I think there was a kind of shared notion that we were leaning on, which had something vaguely to do with like um, Marxist
Some
Leninism.
sort of vaguely
Yeah,
gesture that notion.
correct. Yeah,
So it seems like the thing you were arguing, like, well, I don't even think you guys ultimately were arguing about that. I think you guys derailed all over the place
yeah,
for most of the debate. But it seemed like the main thing you guys were supposed to argue about. I don't even think that it was very clearly conveyed what you were arguing
I
about. I think it
agree.
was like just sort of vague notion of what you're you know playing footsie with tanky, where tanky isn't really is sort of opaque. It's kind of like uh we have some notions about like some loss of rights somewhere and
Yeah,
some sort of like left leaning or far left leaning things, um but not it's still fairly blurry. It's still pretty blurry.
I
We
think
don't
it's
need
pretty
perfect.
blurry. Yeah, because well, I'm frustrated because I think that I'm reading myself now, but I think that it reveals that clarity will reveal like a lack of disagreement. I started that way. Like that's my position, is that like where's the disagreement? What's the prescription that we can identify over the course of that conversation? I think that the prescription has to do with like associations, perhaps, or like, but not even there, right? Because they're basically there was this hinting at prescriptions that maybe we shouldn't have had the Vanguard on, or if we did have them on, we should have been tonally more aggressive against the Vanguard, and that somehow that would thereby like the chat would reflect that these people, that my chat is like, as opposed to what it currently is, which is Marxist Leninist, which I do not agree with that characterization. But like I think that you are correct that there were vague notions about what these terms meant. I felt it was frustrating to try to get linearization in this context, and maybe I didn't do the best job of doing that, but I
Just
was trying to stick to the same topic.
yeah, just to quickly catch because I don't know about much about the Vanguard. Like, are there like just some like far left or like left
I would say
like
that they're far
um,
left. They definitely espouse, socialist idea. I mean, their name is the Vanguard, right? They're definitely like support people, but they voted for Biden, they voted for Kamala, and every time I've talked to them, they've been concerned about the authoritarianism of Donald Trump, and they've been concerned about rights violations in contexts where I take those to be like genuinely held beliefs. They are concerned about rights violations that someone who is like principally against. Now, maybe they're against the rights violations only because of Trump, that they're being bad faith. But when I talk to them, it seems like they are concerned, for example, of like the deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. They are concerned about First Amendment issues. You and I discussed Mahmoud Khalil. Now, it could be that they're only concerned about those because of the political like convenience, right? Where it's because the people that are having their rights trampled upon are politically favorable to them. You understand me? But
mhm.
I, as I've talked to the Vanguard, the fact that they're willing to acknowledge the Democrats as a lesser of two evils, the fact that they seem concerned genuinely with certain rights violations, to me, I have not gotten the impression from the Vanguard that they would fit under what I would think of as a quote unquote tanky, even notwithstanding the fact that yes, their name is the Vanguard.
Right, right.
You know,
Okay, so if you if would do you think that he's under the impression that he would, or do you think that
by
he
he you
would
mean
consider the
Destiny?
Vanguard? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that he would call them tankies.
Okay, so then you so yeah, okay, another point of need for semantic analysis, um, to clear that up. Did quick question before we go on to the one
Yeah,
example I noticed. Did, did you notice any? Because one thing I did get a sense of, regardless of whether they're they fit into this category of tanky or not. Um, one concern I definitely did hear, and I think this is like it might even be a shared concern. Probably is that there are certain characters that just seem to just bash the
yeah.
Democrats.
Which I don't quite
And
understand as being the same critique. Maybe they're kind of associated with each other and they're aligned with each other. I'll let you finish what you said. Sorry for interrupting.
yeah, no, no, I mean, certainly there's an association with like
Yeah.
the certainly at least appears to be association. Like the further on the left you kind of tread, the more that sort of thing starts sort of pops its head around, where they just bash Dems just to score bash Demming points or whatever points
Mm-hmm.
they think they're scoring for whatever reason. Um, and so even regardless of whether you draw the line like, okay, well, tanky is here, tanky is there, I think one thing that seems a point of concern, regardless of whether they fit into the category of tanky, is look, are they in line with us in our political goals? Are they supporting
Right.
gonna at the end of the day, support us against the Republicans?
Which
Are they
matters a
gonna
lot to us on Live and Learn. Like that project, the quote unquote project, matters to us, and that project I think is best defined by voting for Democrats and helping them win. I understand why people could take issue with Dem
did
bashing
you
for
get
the
any of
sake of
that
it.
from the do you think he well let me ask you this, do you think he thinks that the Vanguard are those sorts of people, regardless if they're tankies or
Yes,
not? So he thinks that they're just basically like just overly bashing Dems
for
and
like
like
virtue points, right? Is that what you're kind of
yeah, so
acknowledging?
just some sort of whatever it is that's motivating them, just overly bashing Dems more to more so than they earn the bashing. Um,
I think he thinks that
yeah,
of them. Correct.
yeah, and you do not share that view, or you do share that view, do
I
you?
have no
I
reason to
don't know.
think that their criticism of Biden and Kamala is motivated to literally score those kinds of points. And the reason I think that is because they praise Biden in ways that like other what I've seen as like the bad. Go ahead.
Exactly my question. So
Yeah.
setting aside the psychological
Yep.
motivation, like whether they're doing it for political points, do you think that they're overly bashing Democrats
Beyond what they deserve.
more beyond what they deserve? Yeah,
I do think
let's
that
ask.
I think that the Vanguard bashes the Democrats more than they deserve. Yes, is the answer to that. My opinion.
Okay, gotcha. Um, is there a difference between is there daylight between you and Steven in terms of like how extreme that is? Is that where the dispute might be? Is like, do you think that it's like they're going over a little bit, and he's like, you guys are nuts, like you're just shitting on our party, or are you closer to each other in that, or
I think that there probably is a difference of degree here. Although I'm not sure, and I'm gonna ramble on, and you tell me if any of this is responsive. So, like,
Mhm.
for example, there are a lot of really harsh criticisms that I, Josiah, Hutch, and Econoboy all levied at Democrats currently in terms of some of the votes, in terms of what they said, in terms of Chuck Schumer, in terms of Hakeem Jeffries, these kinds of people. We have levied pretty harsh criticism at them. Some of them have overlapped with the kinds of criticism, and so has Stephen, to be fair. Like, Stephen has criticized some Democrats for certain votes they took and for being like cucks on some issues, more to do having to do with like their engagement and their willingness to like accede to cancel culture and kind of wokeism and to just be, for lack of a better word, cuck bitches. Let me think. Yeah, like that, right? Like, but
Mhm.
there's an overlap of harsh criticism that I think is mutual, that we accept and acknowledge as genuine, legitimate, and within scope of what is the Democrats deserve, that is shared between me, Stephen, and the Vanguard. I think that that is true. But I think if you were to ask Stephen or Connor, I actually don't know about Connor, but certainly of Steven, that he and I would have a difference of scale degree in terms of that criticism, of how much is within the, I don't know, the reasonable amount of criticism.
Right, right. Yeah, so I mean, like, if I could just put this into like an analog, so for example, like, you might not believe this, but there are certain things I might criticize the Israeli government on.
Yeah.
Like, there's certain things, like, it's as hard as that is to believe. Um, and and but I can spot the difference. Not me, but if I spot the difference between someone who's just like, okay, here is someone who is giving a lot of criticism for Israel, but it's it's fair. They're not making any, like, points I wouldn't make, or I wouldn't see an unreasonable person making. And it's also not just like almost all that they're doing. It's like they haven't made their life or their personal identity almost to
Israel
just
bash.
yeah, just to Israel bash. Versus, like, when I see some accounts, there are some accounts that they may make criticisms that you would make, or I would make, or or another normal person or a reasonable person would make, even if I disagree with the criticisms. But if I just scroll through their timeline, it's like that's all it fucking is. Or like it's like 90% or like 80% of it. It's just like nonstop. And analogously, like, if I see someone making criticisms of the Democrats or Dem Party, and it's like all they're fucking doing. It's like, even if they're reasonable criticisms, like, they're not anything that you wouldn't make or Stephen wouldn't make. But if that sort
It
of in a
occupies all
meaningful
their
way,
time, right?
yeah, it almost like in a meaningful way became like a substantial portion of their identity almost, where it's like I scroll through their timeline and this is like every other post, bro. Like, I know I can figure out if I read your timeline enough just to be like, okay, like, you do vote for Dems, like, I see that, and you're against Trump, I also see that. But holy shit, I just had to wade through like all of this Dem bashing to get there. Is that the sort of thing that so same questions,
Mm-hmm.
is that the sort of thing that Stephen would describe Vanguard as, and would you describe Vanguard as that?
I would describe, I think that Destiny would say that the criticisms of Trump are couched in a cavalcade of dem bashing. I think that he would characterize them that way, no question. In terms of me, I think that they're highly critical of mainstream Democrats, but I almost see the kind of the Trump bashing and the jank bashing, for example, which is really just like Republican bashing. And I see the acknowledgments that Democrats are way better, and I kind of view those as all on the same sort of spectrum. Like the evidence that of Republican bashing, I kind of see as Democrat bolstering. So I don't kind of view them as separate categories the way that you kind of presented it as. Oh, I don't know if you're understanding me. So like the
Well,
evidence of Republican bashing, I would be like, oh, that's like good Dem stuff, and I'll weigh that accordingly in the way that I would like a Dem praising.
so this is a bit of a separate issue. So I'm not talking about. So we can address that. That aside,
Okay.
that's an issue of, is this that's an issue of, like, is the Republican bashing genuine good Dem stuff, or is it just a way of underhandedly getting some Dem bashing points in a like, more acceptable way? That's a different. That's an issue, but we can discuss that. But that's a little separate from what I'm asking. What I'm
Okay.
asking is
Yep.
more about just the raw split. So if I see someone and their timeline is like, well, just use an extreme example,
Mm-hmm.
95% Dem bashing, and the other 5% is like genuine Republican bashing. And if I were to read everything, I would be able to figure out that they actually do vote Dem and
Mm-hmm.
they really do hate Trump and everything like that.
Yep.
But on a first blush, just going through this, I mean, like, wow, this person, I wouldn't have expected. They just hate Democrats. Like, they're
Mm-hmm.
bashing them all the time.
Well,
Or at least they've made a good portion of their identity that. So that's a little different than the issue of, like, oh, like, the 5% Republican bashing, whether that's genuine or not. Like, it would be
mm-hmm.
genuine, but even if it is genuine, if someone is just spending so much of their efforts to Dem bash, uh, to the point where it looks almost part of their identity, that that is a separate issue, and that could be deleterious to the Democratic Party if their influencers are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with respect to that issue, do you think Stephen would be sort of on that side of describing them as with the split? It doesn't have to be 99,
Yeah,
99
I
or
actually
90.
don't know what he would like. I assume he would. His instant reflection would be, and this is me being honest, would be to say yes to that. I don't know if he has a representative sample of like watching these guys, their content, or of their Twitter feeds. I don't know if he follows them, so I don't know if it would be an informed decision. But I certainly would think that reflexively, Stephen would make that claim of the Vanguard. If you're asking what my position is on that, whether from a pure terms of like space, right? How much does it occupy their time? And you are just asking the space question, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
just the split, like yeah, and there's an important reason to it. It's just like
Okay.
if you can tell when someone is just devoting that much time to making, even if they're reasonable criticisms, just making those criticisms over and over again, or just finding new criticisms to make, even if they are somewhat reasonable, and it's just occupying so much of their space. There's something there that's not that appears to not just be like this good, and it's possible it could be, but there's usually something there that's ulterior. It's not just they're like genuinely concerned, although a lot of people will say they are the ones who do it. I'm just genuinely concerned with
The Democrats being
and
able
now,
to win elections and being,
yeah, I
yeah,
just want them to get better. I want them to
yeah.
reform. I've seen it all the time, analogously with Israel. Like, I'm just the progressive Zionist who wants Israel to get better and reform, and then like down the line they're like, "Oh no, sorry, yeah, I went
Yeah, but
anti-Zionist."
you
Yeah.
could acknowledge that there could be someone who's like the biggest Israel supporter could be genuine in their support for Israel as a
Sure,
state
sure.
and be like, this is madness, blah blah blah. You know?
Yeah, no, no, of course, I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is there is a certain pattern that's indicative of the former rather than the latter. And one pattern that I've noticed, at least, maybe you can disagree with this.
Mm-hmm.
One pattern I've noticed is just the raw split. If you just go through someone's timeline and it's like 95% Israel bashing, even if and they say it's genuine, it's just pages and pages and pages, like the bash about, like it's all they talk about almost. And then you have to wade through all of that to get to like the posts about, oh, they actually are Zionist. Wow, like wow, that's weird. And they actually don't like, they actually, support a Jewish state and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, okay, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sort of indicator that there's some sort of ulterior. It doesn't have to be an ulterior motive. It could be like a psychological thing where they're just feeling, righteous indignation or virtue on some level of doing this.
Could it be that
And
that's their
getting.
beat? So like, okay, so I'll give you an example. So yeah, I'm a major Republican, but my whole thing is I'm the Republican soothsayer, and I'm the one who's trying to make adjustments specifically for the Republican Party. To give you an example of this in the Israel context, right? There are people who say, for example, the reason we have to focus so much on the Israel-Palestine conflict, and the reason we have to spend so much time on it, is because America's involved with Israel in a way that they're not with like Sudan, or they're not with like the Rohingya people. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like that. There's some
Yeah, I've heard that.
reason related to the proximity or areas of interest or area of expertise. So I'll give you another example. Like I spend most of my time talking about domestic policy as relates to like corruption and stuff. I don't spend most of my time like doing socialist theory. I don't spend most of my time even on foreign policy. I don't spend most of my time on social policy. Most of my my content is focused on either hard political analysis or with a nexus to legal stuff, and that's just because it's my interest. And likewise, I hear what you're saying, that there could be some person whose the percentage of time they spend on dem bashing could indicate an ulterior motive. That is to say, well, actually, I don't know. Maybe it would be for self enrichment or for clout or for building some kind of niche to for oneself. But it
Yeah.
also could be, that's my area of interest. That's where I think I can have the biggest change. That's where I want to move,
Just to be clear, it's not being claimed as an entailment. It's being
Right.
claimed as an indicator. It militates to favor one hypothesis over the other. It's not saying the other hypothesis is impossible.
Okay. Yeah. I think I would agree that it is support for one of those hypotheses, namely and here specifically, just to be for total clarity, it would be the dem bashing is for self enrichment and for social clout, right?
So either or some sort of righteous indignation feeling. There's like this weird thing I noticed. I don't know if you picked this up as well. It almost seems like some people just want the Dems to fail so that they can get the bash in and feel good about themselves that they're getting the bash in. It's like there's this like I told you so righteous indignation feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that. I know, and there's a lot of that on the Israel stuff too. It's like they almost want more. Like there are some people I could
who want more death. You think?
Yeah, they want more Palestinians to die and starve, so they can say, "I told you the GHF wouldn't work. Look at all these massacres. Like I told you, Israel's crazy." They would rather, regardless of whether they're right about any of the other stuff. It's like that almost psychological motivation. Like they'll talk about the massacres that Israel or the killings that the IDF has done. Like they'll get on these podcasts and they're almost smiling when they do it. It's like, wait a minute, this is weird. Like,
yeah, I think there are certain people where that's in their DNA almost, right? And I don't deny that such people could exist, and I don't even deny. I don't hear you to deny that there could be mixed motives as well, or lies that people tell oneself. No, I really want to help the Democrats. Oh no, this is really just about Israel. And I guess we're kind of, I don't want to say we're mind reading as to say that it's not a worthwhile inquiry that we're suggesting, but like we are kind of like picking apart what it could be, and I don't deny that one such rationale could be righteous indignation. Yes.
Cloud could be righteous indignation, could be like all this whatever. Yeah, and I'm saying is like that. So that's the one thing is the split, and then the other thing is like, oh, is the other thing is not a point that I really asked. It's something you brought up was whether there's a couched, if their criticism of the Republicans are couched with criticism of Democrats. Like, is there a little element of a little
kick,
a little kick, a little jab to the Democrats every time they give a Republican criticism?
Sure. But I want to be clear. Yes, I hear that. But some people who take a slice of my content, at least for the immediately after the election, a lot of it was like, fuck Trump and look at what the Democrats did, and look what the Democrats did. Mm-hmm. And so and I think I'm just being honest with you.
It's unique to that. We all do this. Yeah, like we all do this. We all do this to things we support to some degree.
Yeah. But let me just be honest about my engagement with the Vanguard. So the content specifically of the Vanguard that I watch is content that I like of him bashing Cenk for trying to build bridges with like Charlie Kirk, where he's not going to find any friends there, right? Or build bridges with like Steve Bannon and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who basically say, fuck you Muslim, or are literally anti-Semitic in the case, I think, of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and where we think that's like not okay. And so I consume a lot of that content. I consume a lot. I don't consume a lot of Vanguard content in general, but when I consume Vanguard content, a lot of it is Cenk bashing. A lot of it is Trump bashing. And that's the bit I consume. And so the Trump bashing that I see, I guess I don't know if I have intuition about whether or not it's being paired with the Dem bashing, such that I can discern that ulterior motive.
But you would at least understand that if you combine those 2 points, like the split point about like just the raw amount of time spent bashing Dems, and if even when you see criticism of the Republicans, it's almost if it's either almost all or like majority has a little Dem kick to it, you would understand why it appears like this person just wants to bash Dems. It's like
I can understand why it could appear that way.
Yeah. It may not be that way, but it certainly looks that way.
Sure.
Certainly
and I think the best way to suss that out is to have conversations sometimes with these people to actually figure it out. I guess like, so I acknowledge there are some separate threads here, and I just want to put them all up in front of the audience. So the one is the tankie thread, which I would agree that tankie bad, right? Marxist-Leninist, as I understand the term Marxist-Leninist, bad.
I don't know. It hasn't even been defined yet.
Oh,
so
sure.
I'm not even like. So.
Okay, but like, I think regardless of whether we have a shared notion of tankie.
Yeah. Whatever your notion is.
Whatever my notion of tankie is tankie bad. Whatever Steven's notion of tankie is tankie bad. Thank you guys for thoughts. Whatever. So that's the thread, is the tankie or not discourse, and whether all communists or all socialists are tankies or should be considered as such, or those who use the label should be considered as such. Then there's the thread of do these people dem bash disproportionate to what they're deserve.
Yeah.
And then what I'm hearing from you is, regardless of whether they deserve it, does the split of the time spent dem bashing indicate some ulterior motive?
Ulterior, yes. It
Okay.
indicates some ulterior rather than some genuine concern for the Democrats.
Okay. So apply that and help me make sense of the convo.
And also the split in conjunction with like some sort of like, even when you're bashing the other side, you're bashing your side.
Yeah. Someone says, I'm a democratic socialist, definitely not a tankie. Yeah. So like, here's another thing. So I know this is it seems separate from what we're talking about. I take one moment of ultimate bad faith from Stephen to be the moment when we're discussing specifically in a context of a conversation where I agree, not everything's well defined, but like whether or not all democratic socialists, all socialists, all communists are Marxist Leninists. He accuses one of my co-hosts for one of my shows I do, Aaron, of being a Marxist Leninist, specifically Marxist Leninist. I ask him for proof to demonstrate that she's a Marxist Leninist, and he pulls up a clip that says that she's a communist and acts as though I wasn't aware that she's a communist, or we're not just here to discuss whether or not like communism entails Stalinism or socialism entails tankieism or anything like that, right? So I can't explain that behavior by anything other than bad faith. I really cannot. And that sours me a bit. Like, and if we're all here to have a discussion about whether or not we should be aligned with certain groups of people, whether or not there are good socialists, whether or not there are socialism and liberalism are compatible or not, for him to specifically pull up that clip where Aaron admits she's a communist, act as though he just owned me on a point that wasn't disputed, that is, that Aaron is a communist. That to me is the height of bad faith, and to me indicates that these different threads that you're presenting, it's not what's going on. I don't think that moment. I think that moment is indicative of an intention here.
A couple questions about that.
Yeah.
So do you think that at that moment when that happened, do you think in Stephen's mind there's like this clear distinction between a communist and a Marxist Leninist? Well, that's question one. Do you think like in his mind there was like those things are different?
I think that he understands in his mind that they are different. That he might have a position that like in practice it's all bullshit because they all kind of ground out, like, practically they all come down to different things. But given the fact that he professes to have a proficiency in understanding and discerning Marxist-Leninism and how it differs from other traditions of socialism and anarcho-communism, I think it defies all credulity for us to think that Stephen isn't at least aware of the quote-unquote official distinction between communism generally, as more broadly defined, versus Marxist-Leninism specifically. I think that defies credulity. And he might say ultimately the distinction is meaningless because the distinction, it just amounts to the same thing, and it's just one is just it leads to another and inexorably. But to pretend that he isn't aware of at least like the on-paper distinction between those two things, to me, defies credulity.
Do you think? Okay, so you think he does know there's a distinction? You suspect that he'll say something along the lines of like, okay, well, it's a distinction without a difference.
Yes.
But you still think he should have either acknowledged that distinction, that because you still didn't get to the it's not at least proof of Marxist-Leninism.
The whole argument is basically, are socialists/communists, are they invariably Marxist-Leninists? And even
is it socialists or communists?
I think it's both. No, it's both, because Stephen himself says he considers socialists and communists like, I guess, the same thing yesterday. So I think in Stephen's mind, if he doesn't see a distinction, an analytical distinction, or one worth commenting on between communists and socialists, I take his references to socialism to be references to communism.
Like hyperbolic. You don't think he was being hyperbolic or anything like that, or any of the stuff that he does when he's like. It's because I know he will say things.
but then if he's aware that there are these distinctions, that, or slight distinctions, technical distinctions, or whatever, then for him to act as though it's an own that he thought that I meant, right, that he thought that I was conflating Marxist-Leninism with communism, or Marxist-Leninism with some of these other traditions, I think that defies credulity. Like, so do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm saying, like, he to think that he would think that I am saying, or I have the position that Aaron is not a communist, by which I'm using that equivalently to Marxist-Leninism. That is,
well, that was actually my next question.
Yeah.
Is did he actually know what was his impression of what your beliefs were about her beliefs? Like, did he think
I
that
think
you
he knows. I think he knows that I view those separately, and
no, that's a different question. So I get that, yeah, he knows you view them separately, but what do you think his view of what you knew her view was? Like, do you think that he knew that you already knew she was a communist?
Yes, I do think that, because he knows that Aaron wears that on her sleeve. He knows that. Aaron wears that on her sleeve. You'd have to be like Aaron wears the communist label on her sleeve. She introduces almost every interaction. So I truly think, and I'm
not
sure
like
that he knows
memeing.
that. No,
Like,
it's not a meme. No. She goes on all these podcasts, and everyone knows that. And like I just reviewed a thing with Hutch, right? And and like in the first interaction with Hutch, he's in the chat right now. Shout out Hutch, my boy. Hutch is like, so what do you call yourself? And she's like, yeah, I'm a communist. And she says that same line that she always gives. I think most socialists are just scared communists. And so I think that Stephen's aware of that. And so given that Stephen's aware of that,
yeah, just the. Do you think he was instead of providing proof, was he in any way making some sort of like inference or indicator type of argument, like if by the fact that she said like most socialists are just scared to say that they're communists, to try to make the case that, okay, well, there's some distinction here, but she's not just a socialist, she's something over and above a socialist. She says she is,
correct,
and she clearly is saying that she is something other than that, and she's also saying the reason she's something other than that is because they're kind of pussies.
Yeah, they're kind of yes, but
to own the more like potentially unpalatable position to others, or more
correct.
Like,
but we're not using her semantics and her, like, we're talking about our visions for what we think, right? What him and I understand to be Marxist-Leninism and communist, and especially given the fact that he was downplaying, you know, how much you can read into a label itself for purposes to when it benefited him. Like, you can't read into the labeling of AOC, and I hope we do get into that at some point, at AOC and Bernie Sanders. You can't read into those labels for him to then take what is essentially a label argument and say, like, and it doesn't have to do with the inherent Aaron's description of how they're different and why communists are socialists doesn't have to do with like a policy difference, but basically just a connotation difference, right? That's what she's describing in what's going on here. So no, I don't think that
I understand you can refute that inference. So right now you're generating a refutation for the inference. That's fine. But that's a bit of a separate thing to what I'm trying to get at, which is whether he's making that inference in bad faith or not. So you can refute the inference and he could have still made it in good faith. So so it's possible for him to say, okay, look, it seems like she's not just using a label. She is using a label, but it's more than that. She's giving some qualifiers to the label. She's saying, okay, well, I'm not just saying I'm a communist. I'm saying like I'm a communist, and that's different from socialism in some meaningful way, in the way that it's more courageous.
She's saying it's the same way, right? Like, she's saying that they are the same. I think it's not her point that it's different. I think her point is that they're the same.
Well, at least in the sense that it's different, in the sense that because she's willing to use that label, she's gonna take a view where it's like she's gonna be more able to own some positions, some that may be seen as nefarious in some way, or may be seen as unpalatable.
But it wouldn't be on the basis that these ideologies are different.
Now you're refuting the inference. You're going back to refuting the inference again. You can refute the inference.
So I'm not trying to refute the inference. I'm trying to direct. So tell me in which way we're not matching. So,
I'm presenting to you an inference that could be faulty. Like, I'm just putting that right now. The inference could be faulty. Mike, what I'm trying to assess now is whether he made the inference in good, it made a fault. Even if we grant it's faulty, he could have made the faulty inference in good faith, or he could have made the faulty inference in bad faith. So you seem to be under the impression like this is the moment where he's bad faith.
Yep.
He's saying that because there's no explanation. This is the moment where it's like, I have no idea how anything could explain this other than bad faith.
Yep.
So he's saying that, okay, like, he's showing a clip. The clip is saying that she's a communist. You were already aware of that. It doesn't make her a Marxist Leninist. You think he's aware of that distinction.
Correct.
You think he knows you were aware of that distinction. You think he knows you were aware that she's already a communist.
Correct.
What I'm asking is, could he have been making some inference that she is more likely to fit into that sort of more nefarious box by her qualifiers? Like, and whether that inference is correct or not, whether that inference works or not, is not the question.
Because I view that inference to be, and do tell me if it makes sense. Does the implausibility of the inference reflect on whether or not we think someone who is generally rational would hold it?
In a heated debate, while you guys are screaming at each other at that point, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, because keep in mind, at this point, you already said that there may be personal backdrop here, and you are at the point in the debate where you guys are basically screaming at each other.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess let me. I don't want it to feel like a dodge, but let me just tell you what I'm weighing. So it's possible that it's a faulty inference, I suppose. If by possible I mean logically, I think it's logically possible that's correct. So there is a logical way in which he's, or like one which would not entail a contradiction, right?
Yeah, not just that. I'm not just asking if it doesn't entail a contradiction. I'm just let's go to plausible. Do you think it's plausible that if there is all this personal backdrop between you two, and then you get into a debate, it gets heated, you guys are screaming at each other, you clearly both would very much like to have a dunk on each other, it seems like, or at least seems like that. And then you get this clip, and then you'd make here's the time. The clip doesn't get there, but maybe I can make some inference to get there. Okay. The question is, could he make that inference to try to argue that without just completely being?
I put it at 5%, Avi. I put it at 5%. This is why I'm 95. I'm 95 because I think that the heated nature of the discourse at that point lends to the notion that he would be willing at that moment, given it's heated, given the high stake, quote unquote, high stakes of it, and that he's attacking my co-host, and he's saying she's a Marxist-Leninist, and he's putting it all out there. And just like where he was unwilling to grant the notion that communism carries a more negative connotation in the American context than socialism, which you would say is absurd, right? He was at that moment. I actually do want to ask you that question. Don't you think it's absurd? Don't you think it's absurd to think that communism doesn't have a meaningfully more negative connotation than socialism in the American context? That's an absurd position, isn't it?
No, I think it does have a. I think communism is seen as a more like taboo, or more like a more negative sort. It's a term that they both carry negative connotations, but I think the communist term carries more negative connotations in the United States
in a meaningful and significant way.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I think they both carry meaningfully negative connotations in the United States, at least in many areas. But I think that socialism, in a meaningfully significant way, is less of that, especially in like liberal academic, institutions,
right?
Especially
so that to me is evidence of a course of conduct during the conversation, where even when something, and I think anybody who is a political observer who is given that situation and says, for example, I am going to bed that there's no meaningful difference, I'm going to die on the hill, there's no meaningful connotative difference between these two terms, is showing themselves during their course of conduct to be unwilling to die on even the most obvious hill. So I think that that course of conduct is evidence in favor of when the tensions are up. Now he feels that he needs to get a W.
Or after.
It might have happened. It might have happened before, but I think it indicates a state of mind even before. And
sometimes I know that this. So sometimes I'll notice this. I don't know if you would agree. Sometimes I notice this with Destiny after he checks out of a debate. Like he'll do this. Like after he's already like given up, like he'll just plant his feet in the sand on something and just like kind of check out.
That's possible, but let me build the case. And you can tell me what you think. And so the 95% is, I think that he's someone who is trying to actually get to a disagreement and see where we disagree, wouldn't be like, oh my God, like in the way he is, where he's using really just the term communist, actually he's a commie. And again, bringing up the second clip where he brings up she wants private property to be abolished, which he knows that the abolishment of private property is like a core tenet in socialism and communism, and that doesn't move the point along either. That he is now just trying to find clips of and really being fed clips that are the most communist sounding and the most scary sounding, and trying to make a big show of it. And that reaction, I think, indicates to me that the overwhelming possibility.
Do you recall when he would listen to that clip, he had this reaction that was like, there was a moment where he listened to the clip and had this reaction, be like the sort of reaction like he laughed and was like, "Oh, I got him now."
Yeah.
Do you remember exactly? You remember when that? Now, do you remember if that moment was when she said she was a communist, or when she made that further point?
I think it was the first one was the communist, but he doubled down on it for the private property point. But what's your how do you see that?
No. I'm asking about the reaction here.
Yeah, I think the reaction was with the first communist clip. That was like the major reaction.
No. I mean, no, not the first, because she said in the first communist clip two things. In the first communist clip, so it happened in the first. I'm asking more specific. When in the first clip did he have that reaction?
Oh, I don't recall that. I don't recall that.
Yeah. So I do recall that, and the reaction wasn't when she said he was a communist. His reaction, his laughing reaction, be like, "Oh yeah, I've heard enough now. Like I got it." He actually had a pretty straight face, from what I recall, when she said she was a communist. The moment where that changed was when she made that further thing about like, oh, because they're pussies. Like they're kind of like the difference. I think really just socialists are just too pussy to admit it or something.
Yeah, but I think that he's aware that that's what she says all the time. That's like he knows that that's her position.
You don't think? I see. So you don't think that further thing is plausibly like some.
Because I think he's always known that, and so he is play acting as though he's never heard Aaron say that. That's what I take to be bad. Like for us to think that he, given the fact that Aaron comes out of his community, they've had these conversations before.
Just to be perfectly clear. So your view is not just that he already knows that Aaron describes herself as a communist, that she wears the communist badge.
He represents in the conversation, Avi, that he's had private discussions in which Aaron has expounded on her ideas to him. So he cannot claim this mantle of ignorance.
But specifically, like you're saying, he's already aware that she makes this point of the socialists are just like too shy to admit that they're communists or something.
Yes,
like that.
and the fact that he's saying that he's had private conversations that reveal the fact that she has said that she's at least is indicated in his mind that he has some deeper understanding of Aaron's position. So it's not plausible, I think, that reaction.
You think that's not, and you think that he doesn't have in his mind that has like any tie into like her being a Marxist-Leninist in any way?
I think that he thinks that. Sorry, say that one more time.
Do you think that him knowing that from her, do you think that has any tie-in in his mind, be it an inference or otherwise, to her being a Marxist-Leninist? Or do you think he's just using that as some sort of he doesn't believe that's a tie?
It's the latter, because to the extent that it's because to the extent that he thinks that comment specifically would indicate Marxist-Leninist tendencies, it's already overdetermined, because he thinks that all communists are Marxist-Leninists, or sorry, that's at least his position. His public-facing position is that these distinctions are meaningless, and so the whole notion that his perception of Aaron as a Marxist-Leninist would turn on the additional comment as opposed to just her general identification as a communist, I think that's not. I hope I'm making sense there.
And you think that position? So right, so you would. Well, so a couple things. So going back to the move to say there's no meaningful difference. Do you think he's making that move in bad faith? Because the whole thing we're discussing was whether he's being bad faith when he's doing
yes.
it. So
yes.
Because if he wasn't bad faith when he's doing that, then he could just be making that clip in good faith.
And the best way the best way to remove all doubt would be to say something like, "Oh yeah, I recognize that this is like not a dunk at all. That we were discussing." Marxist-Leninism and whether or not communism entails Marxist-Leninism and whether these distinctions matter. And I recognize that now that there's objective evidence that Pisco was aware of this, literally reacted to multiple clips and had these conversations with Aaron, that this was silly of me to act this way, or at least I was wrong in thinking that this was any kind of move on any point. But I think there's a 0% chance that he would do that. But I think that in the moment he was pressed, just like when he was pressed on the issue of whether communism has a deeper connotative negative reaction in America, and he was gonna always produce some clip in that moment to make it seem like he won the point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my perception of it, and it's a strong perception.
So if he at a point later says like, okay, yes, I don't think he's going to give the concession that the way you framed it. If he does, I think it would be a more of a sort of say, okay, yeah, technically that clip doesn't actually show that she's a Marxist-Leninist. She could just be like, any other adjacent sort of tankie or whatever. She could just be a communist who like has extreme tendencies.
But he won't do that either, Avi, because his whole thing is that these distinctions are meaninless or unreal.
But then he'll say that too. Then he'll say, follow it up with, but yeah, honestly, none of this really matters. It's all a bunch of bullshit. They're all the same.
But that's the whole thing we're there to discuss, Avi. The whole thing we're there to discuss. I guess we don't know what the whole thing is that we're there to discuss is whether or not yeah.
I don't think. That's the biggest issue. See how it is when you get into a debate when you don't clear up.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's frustrating, but so can we move to the to the actual like issue of the socialist policies and Bernie and all that stuff? Yeah, because
I mean, there was one thing I actually did put some work into about like, and again, it's like sorry to get all importance on definitions and everything, but
yeah,
one thing that actually got it with my field is like this question. I have no idea. I forgot how you guys got into this, but like, is single payer healthcare socialist?
Yeah. So this happened
you
because
guys spent on that. It was like I don't know. Was it like a good 20 minutes on that?
There was like a good amount of so basically my whole point in doing that, and this is just to give you the chronology there, and then I want to hear your point on it because you do take a view of it, which you did make a tweet about it. Was I was basically saying that their definition they're giving of socialist is narrow beyond what people use the term to me. That it doesn't track usage of the term socialist, and certainly not labeling of people as socialists. That's why I brought up Bernie Sanders, Zohar Mamdani. And by the way, for those of you guys in the chat right now, we have clips of Destiny calling Mamdani socialist, clips of him calling AOC socialist, clips of him calling Bernie socialist. Like, so he previously has referred to these people as socialists. And so, I guess he could have changed his mind about whether they're real socialists, but my whole point in that discussion was specifically
you could be using it in a different sense. Like you can use words.
It's possible, but then if he's recognizing that they could be used in different senses,
you should clear it up. What sense you're using?
Yes. I think it's important to
clear. But the criticism of failure to clear up the senses is different from the criticism of like just changing your view or
right. But here's the issue, Avi. Like when we did clear up usage and. Econoboy
you guys cleared up usage?
When Econoboy was at least clear about what he meant, right? What he meant by socialist is this model of, from Clement Attlee, this model of this different socialist tradition that appeared elsewhere. When he cleared up what Econoboy meant, like Econoboy said, this is what I mean. When I use socialism, I'm using it in the sense of Clement Attlee, not in the sense of Mao Zedong. I'm using it in the sense of Clement Attlee. And so when he cleared it up, Stephen's prescription was still kick fucking Econoboy off the podcast. And so it doesn't seem, therefore, that like clarifying the terminology changed the prescription. And maybe the prescription is consistent as between, someone who labels himself, or, regardless of the ideology behind it, because you just have such a aversion to using it as a label, but whatever. Yeah.
Well, he might wait, but did he see? I don't know what the clarification of that notion of socialism was. I may have not watched that part, but did you think he saw that as the same sense of socialism that he may have used when he described someone like Bernie Sanders?
I think that he would be consistent I think that he would recognize Econoboy's description of socialism as used in those other models in these other countries historically. I think that he would view that in the same vein as AOC uses it, in the same vein that Bernie Sanders uses it. And he would just say, but that's not real socialism, bro. That would be his response, I think.
Mm-hmm. I see it. So he is using different senses. Like when he's describing Bernie Sanders as a socialist, he doesn't mean like, it would be something like I'm describing, this is not a one-to-one analogy, but like if I describe someone as a pig because they're a sloppy eater versus then I'd say, oh, like this is a pig, a swine. It's like, there's different or if I describe different, oh, you're a real right winger, and then I talk about Ben Shapiro versus Nick Fuentes. I mean, I don't. It's not really the same sense of right winger.
I agree.
It's
but that's why. But then why? Therefore, why does it say we need to click all socialists out of the party? If what you mean by socialists is the tankies, then yeah, then there's no disagreement, right? But it seems that he's still.
Say when you say kick all socialists, are you talking about
Econoboys, right?
Are you talking about socialists or socialist prime? Like when you say kick all right wingers, the Republican Party, are you talking about Ben Shapiro right winger? Or are you talking about, because you can say all right wingers and you could still be consistent on that if you don't clear the sense up. You could, because you could just be talking about the radical sense, and
if he does say all socialists in the sense of any reasonable definition of socialists, including any of the uses.
But that's a different way. That's a different way.
Any definition of socialist, I suppose that's used, right?
That would be a different thing.
Okay,
but that's a different.
Okay, then help me out.
Because okay, so for example, if I say we should kick all right wingers out of the Republican Party, and by right wingers I just mean like Nick Fuentes style stuff.
Yeah, then we'd be like, oh, great, we agree.
Wait, then someone was, but now someone is like, well, wait a minute, you said all right wingers, but you said Ben Shapiro was a right winger. That could just be an issue of not clearing the sense up. It doesn't mean that someone says all right wingers also mean Ben Shapiro,
because it's just carrying forward the same terminology issue. Yeah, so I think I understand what you just said, but then help me out here, because the prescription that Stephen gave applies to anyone using the socialist label.
Oh, he said that regardless of what you mean by it,
yes,
then anyone uses the label.
Yes. Now he adjusted that in the debate to be okay. Anyone who uses the socialist label who's a media figure, but not a politician, and that is so bizarre as to be seemingly crafted for the specific purpose of dodging certain hypotheticals that make him look bad. What, only media figures? So your prescription is only excise from these areas of control people who use the socialist label, regardless of what they mean by socialist and what they mean by the label, but do it only for media figures and not for actual politicians you're voting for. Like, make sense of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Well, I'm more. I could speculate. I guess it's not really the purpose, but I mean, like, so someone, I guess, could take a view that like socialism just has too much baggage. It'd be like the word Nazi. It's just like, okay,
but then presumably you would apply that to the Democratic politician, wouldn't you? I mean, like, why would it be specific and exclusive to the media figure?
Can say like, all right, well, if we really need to beat the Republicans and they're using, they don't really mean that they're a Nazi when they describe themselves as a Nazi, and we need to get Trump out, then, just because they're doing something bad by using a label that's inappropriate, but they don't really mean that they espouse Nazi ideology, that could be overlooked for the pragmatic purpose of like, politics and all that. So one could take that sort of view where it's like, okay, well, you're doing something inappropriate by using the label. It carries too much baggage, but
I'll still vote for you.
We still need your vote to get.
But then why wouldn't it be like, okay, Econoboy, you're doing something inappropriate by using the label, but like you can still be on the show. Like, I don't understand why what reasonable prescription would.
We don't need you to be on the show, because you being on the show doesn't really have the same impact of like whether Trump is out or not, or whether like the Republicans win. It's like that. The point is that it's more consequential if it's a politician.
So okay, so because there are higher stakes with politicians who use the label socialist, regardless of what the label they use the label to be.
Right, they're using the label inappropriately, but like that can be overlooked for the high stakes.
Okay, but it can't be overlooked in the context of Econoboy.
Low stakes. Or just low stakes more broadly. It's like if the stakes are much lower, then it's like, okay, no, we should punish this. It's like then it's worth it to punish the users.
Oh, do you think that's what he means, and that's what his position is?
You didn't ask me what he meant. You asked me to make sense of it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So then you successfully.
You sort of asked me to steelman his position, which I'm doing now. Copy?
Okay, so you just steelmanned it. Do you think that that's reasonably like his position? Sorry, I won't ask reasonably. Do you think that that's?
I'll tell you what I think. I think people have loose notions of what I think at the point in I think sometimes people have loose notions of what their position actually is, and sometimes it might vaguely track something like that, even if they're not able to articulate it in the moment. I don't know if that's actually his position. If it is his position, I don't think he had it like articulated, and I don't think he had it like crystal or clear. Maybe it's not his position at all, but I think people sort of sometimes operate on vague notions, and they're kind of clustering around something until the light bulb hits, and they're like, "Oh, maybe that's like something I could land on that makes sense."
Okay.
So I think something you might. I think if if you want something for the future is maybe, and I'll again, like I said, I'm happy to mod between you two guys to so you guys actually can communicate with each other, or at least try to help you guys if you want to elicit that position out of him. But look, the task was for me to make sense out of it, and I at least found one way in which someone can make sense.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that a little bit, because I'll have to rewatch the debate and see whether that would make light of the other comments that he made there. So, but I appreciate the effort and trying to make sense of it, and
hey, you asked me.
I do appreciate that. I do appreciate that. No, okay, so let's get to the actual. So you messaged me.
Yeah. About so is single payer socialism.
Yeah.
And so right off the bat, like, it seemed like you were using again, like, same issue. You seem to have been operating with a different notion of socialism than definitely what that other I forgot his name. There was another person who
Counterpoints?
Actually counterpoints. Actually, like, straight up like outlined the view, like, or at least the definition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they actually said at some point, like, and this is a good thing. Okay, they actually did. Like, now they said some kind of silly things, like, do you disagree with the definition? That I don't even take that question.
I was trying to push that a little bit, but be like I don't understand the normative notion of.
I don't even think like you can. I guess you can like have a normative like opposition, but I wouldn't even call that a disagreement. Like, I don't take definitions to even be propositional,
right?
In that, but regardless, one thing he did well, or that a lot of people weren't doing, was he actually defined a term. Like, good, fucking good. Finally, like I takes and to be honest, from what I could tell, it wasn't that crazy of a definition. It's like it was something like the
decommodification of private property and something else. Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, something antithetical to private ownership of the means of production.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not a crazy definition. Like, that is sort of close to what standard economists would say. Now they'll put more they'll be more precise about it. They'll say, like, okay, it's not just the means of production, it's also the means of distribution. It's also it's other service as well. And also, it's not necessarily, it's like, it could be community at large versus public versus a co-op. They'll have, but broadly speaking, it sort of tracks, okay, means of production are not privatized. Like,
when I was asked what I take socialism to be, I said at its broadest, what I understand socialism to be, like, very broadly, is workers owning the means of production, and that is broad, and maybe
also it's not a crazy. But notice, but you gave that definition then.
I did, yes.
So then if you gave that definition, then I'm not. So then I see an issue with this whole. So then
why is that?
But if you're operating, unless you're using a different definition, because then I'm not sure.
Oh, why... sorry. Let me explain. So what I take to be, what my understanding of workers owning the means of production is, the fact that it's my notion doesn't mean that I still don't think that, like, definitions, to the extent that there's any normative, like, what I take the word socialism to mean is broader, and it should track usage, or it does track usage, and people use it in different ways. And so when people,
you can sure. I'm not saying what you've offered is the univocal sense of socialism.
Okay,
like, you could use it in senses. However, though, if you've offered an operating definition in the context of a debate, and you're going to say something like, okay, well, single payer healthcare is socialist, you probably would want to say, okay, well, I know I gave a different definition of socialism as an operating definition, but I'm using a different operating definition now, because you understand, like, if you gave that operating definition, you have an issue with that claim.
But here's another issue, right? Because a quote unquote socialist policy doesn't necessarily have to be, like, coextensive with the broad definition of socialism. So someone could have a different notion of socialist policy. Reminds me of a debate that I reviewed with Isaac about.
There's another issue with that. I agree.
Yeah.
There's a problem. There's another issue. So when you invoke something and say, okay, well, this is a socialist policy, you have to dial in what you mean by that at that point, because if you're going to say something is a socialist policy, that's also compatible with it being a capitalist policy. Like saying, like, well, this is an atheist position, but it's also a theist position.
Oh, that reminds me. Yeah. So can you help me out? So suss out your position, because you have a position that single payer is not socialist policy, not a capitalist policy.
It's neither strictly socialist nor strictly.
But you have a position that universal health care or national health, the NHS in the UK is a socialist policy. Can you explain that?
The difference is that they own the means of production.
The
NHS owns the majority of the hospitals.
Okay, but if you had a single payer system where the government owned all health insurance, why wouldn't that be compatible?
Because they're not owning the means of, because just paying for the production doesn't mean you own the means of production.
I see.
If you pay and you also own the means of production, then that's different. Okay. Then that is within the definition of socialism.
So what you're saying is because insurance cannot be viewed as a quote means of production because it's not producing things.
Not in the same way that a hospital is.
Okay. All right. But then the question,
even if you view it as a sort of means of production, it's not going to be of the same magnitude as owning the hospital system. It's like just
it might not be the same magnitude of owning the hospital, but
not even kissing toes. Like it's like if you're so two points. So one, you can make the case that it's not really the means of production; it's the funding for the means of production. So you can make a categorical argument.
Okay.
But even if you let the categorical argument slide, there would be a heavy scale argument as well. There would be to say like, okay, well, I guess in some small, even if that categorical case fails, like in some small technical sense, maybe it is socialist if we somehow consider payments a single payer as owning funding as the means of production. Although, I guess there would be a whole lot of other issues with that. Anyway, but like even if that's aside, we surely could appreciate the distinction between
a hospital and the payment system for the hospital. I think I can buy. I think so. I think I can buy that. You know, maybe we can categorically treat a hospital I guess as a more productive or as a productive thing, whereas insurance maybe is not. So I guess two questions on that. So first is, if I had substituted universal health care as a socialist policy, would you have an objection in the same degree?
If what you mean by universal health, well, when you say universal healthcare, do you mean a system in which everyone is insured, or do you mean a system
government-owned healthcare systems?
Is the means of production? Oh no! Then if you're saying the government owns the means of production, that is just straightforwardly the standard economic definition of socialism. It's just like the or at least it would fall into that category.
Okay.
Because the public would be owning the means of production of the healthcare.
Okay, and so a major.
That's not true, but that's not necessarily true with single payer.
And it's not true of single payer because insurance is fundamentally different, and the means of payment.
It allows you can have single payer with private ownership of the means of production of the healthcare system.
Correct, and you don't consider the single payer itself to be production.
The means of production, or at least not nearly kissing the toes to the same degree as a hospital would be, or a clinic or a lab or something. And this, you could view this in a similar way of any other industry. Like, for example, if I had a coal mine and the government subsidized
like the voucher system.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, but I still own it. Was still privately owned versus if the government owned it.
Okay, so right? Let's if for example, like and it wouldn't just be government doing stuff in parallel to. You wouldn't consider any socialism to be like the government introducing a system that has where it's dual private public, right? So for example, like there's public pension systems.
Well, that's a whole different.
Yeah.
That's a whole different scenario because, like, now we can start making cases like, okay, well, maybe there's gradations because, like, if the government owns 20% of the hospital,
Right.
50% of you can make some like, okay, well, is it this percent socialist now? Like, that's a whole different conversation.
Okay.
But I don't think we even need to have that conversation because that's tangential. It's because the conversation we're having now is not even about if it's single payer. It's not even about government ownership of the means of production, like a hospital or a clinic or a lab.
But it would be
Funding. It's just where the funding is coming from. It's just is it paying? Is the funding being paid? And by the way, single payer doesn't even mean the government has to do it, although the government usually is supposed to do it. If there's one
single payer assuming universal health government ownership.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess I could specify that, but okay, but
that's a more minor point. But the point is that it just means that one entity, in this case usually the government, is paying for it. It doesn't mean they own it. But ownership is the part of the definition and the standard definition of economic.
I mean, but you know, ownership of health, like health insurance companies are things. They have buildings. People work in them. There's papers that funnel into these buildings.
That would just depend on whether you consider it just the means of healthcare production versus the
health
means
insurance
of
production. Yeah, so maybe
health insurance. If it's not, well, then you can say the health insurance system is socialist, but the mealthcare system is not necessarily.
So you wouldn't necessarily have a problem with saying we're socializing the health insurance system.
If you mean the means of production of health insurance is publicly owned.
Yeah, to extend these health insurance these are products. There's a lot of these.
That's the question that was at hand. The question is at hand. People's like, what is the healthcare system socialist or a single payer socialist? Would people take that to mean? I don't think they're taking it to mean a very trivial truth, or it's almost a tautology, where it's like, okay, well, single payer provided that it's the government. Yeah, by definition, that means
socialist health insurance.
Yeah, by definition, then yeah. But I think that's not really the.
So you didn't think I meant so you think when I said was single payer socialist, you think I meant single payer where there's a private component, or did you think
I think what people take that conversation to mean is the healthcare system socialist broadly? Like, is this a socialist healthcare system? I don't take it
not
to
health insurance system.
Just to be I don't take them to be asking the question, hey, is our health insurance specifically socialist in a capitalist healthcare system? I don't think they're asking that. I think the question that just comes to people's mind is, hey, is it a socialist healthcare system?
Well, the question is it a socialist policy? And if the question is it a socialist policy with respect to health insurance, the answer, I think you're saying it's trivially true, but I think the answer is yes, right?
I think people, even a capitalist, could take that view and they wouldn't really care because they were like, okay, I don't really consider that part of the, means of production of healthcare. If you want to have like some kind of view where you're defining health insurance as a product that's produced and
these are like complicated because you're in the industry. These are complicated products that are sold. Yeah.
I get it. But the point is that broadly, there are capitalists who advocate for single payer.
I agree, and guess what? There are capitalists who argue in favor of national ownership of healthcare.
But I'm saying it's like they're consistent. No, I don't mean like they're an idiot by doing it or like they're not seeing the inconsistency. Like what they're saying is that I think it's pretty simple. What they're saying, they're taking a view that like they even take a view that it would improve capitalism.
But you could take that view of healthcare, right? If you socialized healthcare and you produced a NHS-like system in the United States, you could say, "Oh, this just improves our capital system."
They don't take it. They don't take it to be that, and it's not something that definitionally is in contrary to capitalist philosophy. Like they're not. You're not taking a means of production as. Again, like with that move about like treating health insurance itself as a
set of complicated products. I mean, like in the coming world, there's a bunch of digital and complicated like systems of. I don't know why.
So here's what I'm saying. I agree that if to whatever degree health insurance or payment itself or money itself rather or funding itself is considered a product,
cryptocurrencies, Bobby. I mean, this is a new thing.
Okay, listen, hey, I'm not trying to say it's like most crazy. To whatever degree that funding itself is considered a product, you have to ask an economist how standard that is, but okay. To whatever degree that is, then trivially, if that product is
Nationalized and
nationalized, if it's like a mean, and if you consider that not just a product but a means of production, um, I don't know if like a funding itself is just like is
categorically
a means of
not a means of production.
yeah, like I don't know if it's like I don't know if that's considered. I don't know enough about economics to know if that would be considered standardly a means of production rather than just funding and some funding mechanism, if that's distinct or not. So I don't know, but so I would say is to whatever degree that is a means of production, if it's publicly owned, then that is socialist. If it is not a means, if it is, however, if it is not a means of production, if it's not considered to be a means of production, rather it's just some funding system,
then definitionally it can't be socialist or capitalist, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, got it.
Exactly.
All right. Putting aside the issue, you go.
The rest of the healthcare system you would understand
Would be capitalistic.
It would be capitalist or socialist, depending on what it could be either.
Right.
Like it depends on if the hospitals are publicly owned or privately owned. It depends on whether the clinics are publicly owned or privately owned.
So addendum there to see if means of production fairly, I don't know, in standard economic terminology would capture things like insurance, things like these other kind of payment schemes, maybe. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
but putting aside whether or not using that definition of means of production, you would consider single payer to be a socialist policy, you would agree that in terms of usage, common usage, that in this country, single payer would be considered a socialist policy.
So in some circles, yes. Although I will tell you, funny you mention this, because I used to be, that notion I'm criticizing in my tweet. There's a reason it's personal because I used to be one of those people that I'm criticizing. I used to be like, oh, single payer healthcare, like that's socialist. And I was this was a long time ago, but I was very quickly corrected. And do you know which group corrected me?
Was it the doctors or was it
It was the socialists?
Oh, what did the socialists say?
I got very quickly corrected by socialists, and they said, "No, like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't know what socialism is. Like, socialism is public ownership of the means of production." And
yeah, but I asked you about common usage.
Yeah, so now they have part of it. That was part of the common usage, but anyway. But no, so to answer your question, I don't have the data on this. However, I will give you my intuition.
Yeah.
My intuition is that especially in some areas of the United States, particularly in the more red states, they will have this notion that single payer is socialist as like this label. If you go to more blue states and you go to especially more like in academic areas where they have like a more understanding, like they're more sophisticated understanding, that becomes less of a common
Whoa,
usage.
you're shitting on red states, Avi.
Well, I mean, I'm just telling you what my impression of the data.
I'm fucking around. All right, sorry, continue. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, yeah, sure. If that's a shit on red states, I think but at least my leaning now is that's what it would be.
Okay.
Because and it's an obvious reason for it. It's just because like that's where that criticism resonates with them. They buy into, they bought into single payer being socialist because it worked on them. They hate socialism. And by extension, it's been so single payer has been demonized as being socialist.
But it's kind of like the term entitlements, right? There's this whole push for entitlement reform. That hit the zeitgeist. And people was like, what are entitlements? What are entitlement programs? Well, entitlement programs include Medicare, include Social Security. And yeah, it was tactical done, but it now tracks usage in political circles.
Yeah. So but you're asking me. So I'm not dealing with like the justification or I'm invoking the mechanism by which it turned on. Not to say like it's the right or wrong notion. I'm invoking the mechanism is just to explain the difference in common usage in different areas. So to answer your question, I suspect there's a mixed common usage of this. I don't think there's going to be like this broad notion that, oh, like in layman's terms, like no matter where you are, it's just going to be like, broadly speaking, single payer or socialist. I think that's going to depend on what kind of layman you're talking to. I think if you're talking to, I think if you went into a college campus, I don't think you get that answer as nearly as much. I think if you went into Texas, or if you went into Alabama, I think you get that answer nearly all the time.
So let me do the harder case then. I think common usage, common understanding, people would say Bernie Sanders, Zoran Mamdani, and AOC are all socialists.
Yeah, they probably would. But then of course, that's the importance of clearing up notions. Like they would, if your question, but okay, so before we get to that thing, so just to quickly answer that, so then you would want to clear up your terms. You would want to say, okay, well, on common parlance usage and layman's spoke, it seems pretty clear that whatever they mean by socialist, they're using that term for these people. And so if that's not in line with like the standard academic notions, whether you're in any field of economics or any of that, it may not fit that, but if it's some notion that's used with, so whatever it's picking out that people are using that term, it's picking something else out. But again, you want to clear that up, especially if you gave an operating definition of socialism that's not what the average layperson says in the debate.
Fair, although I think jury's out on the on this little insurance trivial point on it, and I admit, I'm not well read on socialist literature, but more to come on that. But no, I hear you, and I think there are certainly ways in which I could have.
Just to be clear, like even if it turns out that there are some economists that say like, okay, yes, like there is a way to classify
insurance as a means of production,
as not just a product but a means of production itself. Even if that's true, the bullet that would be bitten by the capitalist then would be to say, okay, well, this thing, sure, like this thing, or at least the capitalist that endorses that would be like, okay, so this,
socialist policy. I'm okay with this.
I'm okay with socialist policy for this one means of production, and broadly, like every other means of production on the entire healthcare system is capitalist. Like that's the.
Yeah, but that's what I think. I think that's a notion of socialism that's sort of embodied by people like Clement Attlee, like people who from like the labor tradition, and that is like a real tradition with legs,
Sure. So, well, I don't know the empirics, but if that is a notion that you're putting forward, that really does need to be cleared up.
I think Econoboy was trying to clear that up.
Okay, well, no, I did notice that Econoboy. Okay, so yes, I did notice that Econoboy did make some attempts to clear notions up as well. So actually, what I will say?
Yeah.
I will say is that the two people that were least trying to clear them were you and Steven.
I was trying to. Well, first of all, I defined. I take your point, but when I asked about a definition for socialism, I did provide one. I thought it was a broad one, and what I was trying to do was, what's that?
But then you went back on it. Then you gave notions of common usage, and then without even specifying that you changed your notion.
No, but first of all, I don't think that my notion. Again, I'm sticking by my official position is that I don't see anything inconsistent with the definition that I provided of means of production. I haven't been shown that that's inconsistent with.
No, the claim is not that it's inconsistent. Okay. No. The claim is not, it's a discussion about who was better at trying to clear things up semantically. I'm just saying that you were the worst because you provided a definition, and then you were operating with a different one without clearing up that you changed.
Wait. I'm not convinced that first of all, I'm not convinced that I changed it.
No, not that you changed the definition, but that you were making claims with respect to a different notion without clearing up that it was with a different notion after you provided a different notion.
No, because I think I was explicit, because I said some things like, if what you mean by socialism is blah 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 blah, then yes, we agree with you. So I don't know. I'd have to rewatch the debate. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're wrong. So I'll rewatch the debate, and maybe we can have an argument about who was most trying to.
I think there was a point where you were defending and you were saying, okay, well, if you asked like the average person, they would say this. So by implication, like you were
right.
you
So
were using
so for example, Destiny said in that like if you would put people in a room as between Hassan and AOC, who do you think would be more socialist? And then I you know, if that's the test, then why wouldn't it be okay as an internal critique of Stephen to be like, well, if you ask the room, do you think most people identify AOC and Bernie as socialist? I don't think that that entails me.
right, but
Yeah.
sure. So if the context was just like, well, if that is your notion, and you're clearly like, okay, well, you know, I'm operating out of what I said was notion, but if that is your notion, then how do you do that? Then you could run an internal critique. I'd have to rewatch that. I probably won't. But just to be honest with you, but okay, but the point is that like these things need to be made a whole hell of a lot more clear. Like you don't want to have these things done by implication. You don't want to have the audience or more importantly your interlocutor try to like rely on this charitable like, okay, well, if he's using this justification, then I should really infer that he's using a different notion. Or like just explicitly say like, here's the internal critique on your notion, or here's a different notion that this would fall under. And I know I said this notion, here's this other one. Like
I agree. I agree that the conversation could have used a lot more clarity. I totally and agree that we should be very specific about our usages. But this is what I want from you, Avi. Like I was trying to get and say like, all right, let's accept your definition of socialism. What's the disagreement? I didn't hear that. I didn't hear what the actual prescription or the substantive disagreement was. Once we like, all right,
concede. I did hear that. That was now. To be fair, that was like what, like the
an
end?
out. Like, sure, but like.
An hour and a half. I think he was done at that point. I think he was completely checked out.
But I think I'm not saying... from the beginning. My point was we're not going to see beyond semantics some major disagreement, except picking at the edges of how I interacted with the Vanguard. You know, that the fact that I have Aaron as a co-host on a show that we do. Yeah. You know, I'm not really getting any substantive critique here, and it seems like this is all much ado about nothing. And even with respect to the potential prescription of using the label. It doesn't even seem like there's a coherent argument as to whether, or when I say coherent, I mean, fleshed out, I should say. Whether there's a fleshed out argument as to the label usage. And, you know, you had to right now, like, jerry-rig an explanation, which I agree is like, you know, kudos to you. I think you did.
Request, just to be clear, you requested that.
I did request it. I'm not saying you did anything wrong there. But
and on the fly, I did it.
And good on you for doing it. I'm not saying that you did anything wrong, and you know, Avi gets his flowers. But I just, to me, one of the reasons why I'm so frustrated with the conversation is it played out in ways that I expected. In that we weren't going to have major substantive disagreements, and they were going to be mostly semantic and mostly posturing and signaling, and not like if anyone comes away like this is what did they really disagree about? I don't really know.
All of that might be true. The problem is right now you're left with an underdetermination. The underdetermination is people, and even maybe yourself, even though you may suspect otherwise, are not going to know whether you came out with no non-semantic issues because you didn't clear up the semantics well, or if you don't have any disputes beyond semantic usage. And so that's the ultimate problem here. You may be right. You may be right that there's no disputes beyond the semantics. But the problem is you haven't resolved the underdetermination there because you didn't clear up the semantics.
Probably true. But I have my strong suspicions, and I think so that's, I'm right. I mean,
so I'll just end on it like So if you do engage with him again, if you do engage with him, if I would very, very strongly recommend to do everything, put way more effort into clearing up term usage. If I happen to be available, I'll be happy to assist with that. If I can make a mod. If not, then I would just wish you guys would just that's probably the most important thing because you're never gonna know if you have a propositional dispute or not if you two can't, regardless of whose fault it was or anything like that. Like you both didn't do it. You both failed to do it. Like you guys didn't understand each other. At the end of the day, you guys were screaming at each other, past each other. You guys did not. At no point did I feel like, hey, the notion you're using right now, he understands it. The notion he's using right now, you're driving. Like I'm at no point in that discussion did it click with me like, oh yeah, these people are following each other. Fuck no.
But the thing is, like, if okay, so this is maybe like pricing in some of my priors on like kind of the bad faith and the pre-debate stuff, but like, and his conduct, what I take to be his conduct in the middle of the debate, which you might see differently, and people might see differently. It seems like there's an effort to change things I say, to change things Boy says. There's other examples of it, right? Like Boy very clearly said on his notion of socialism, it's not incompatible with liberalism. And Stephen essentially had a conversation with Counterpoints and was like, yeah, Boy said he would get rid of all opposing political parties. Complete lie, complete fabrication when Boy was being completely clear. Then I understand that like there's not an entailed contradiction necessarily between Stephen saying, all these different people are socialists in one context.
I don't think he's lying about that. I think he may be wrong, but I don't think he's lying. I think he really does believe that.
You think that he believes that Boy? You think he believes that Boy wants to, in his ideal society, would ban all other political parties?
Yes, and the reason I think that is because on that Twitter thing he answered yes and no, and I think that's all he read. Once he got the yes and no, like he just. Oh, yeah, you're like fuck you. Like, he may be something, he may be wrong, but I think he actually does believe that.
Really, I find that Boy laid it out, and I'm not remembering his argument, but
at least from what I watched, from what I watched in terms of like the back and forth on Twitter and his recollection of that back and forth on Twitter, I think he really believes that. Like, I think he took that Twitter exchange to be like, oh yeah, like I'm pretty open to like banning opposing political parties that would.
How about this whole notion of us like pussyfooting around with the Vanguard and like not actually pushing back in any meaningful way, and this kind of tone policing? You really think that this is a genuine criticism coming out of Stephen based on your priors on him? That he's actually concerned about the tone in which we're not like forcefully enough combating the Vanguard? Like, do you think that that's a legitimate concern of his, or do you think it has to do more like is there something else going on there? Do you really think that?
So I can speculate. I will just say right off the bat, like this is coming from someone who is not familiar with Vanguard's content. I probably have never watched them. This is also coming from someone who I'm not even one of your regular watchers. I engage with you way more than I watch you.
Okay.
So
that hurts me a little bit, but no, I'm totally joking. Go, sorry.
But no, I'm not. I don't mean that as an insult or anything.
Yeah, I know. I
enjoy engaging more than I enjoy watching. It's
sure
just a product of me. It's not you.
It's not you.
So okay. So I do genuinely. Here's what I believe. I do genuinely believe that there is a very genuine concern that Stephen has when people unduly bash the Democrat Party more than it's deserved, and it seems like they're just doing it and they're engaging in something other than politics. And I think that really does cause a genuine sense of enragement with him. And I do suspect, I do suspect that there is a component of that where he might, and again, this is coming from a very strong place of ignorance because I'm not really in it, but just on my priors, my initial suspicion is he probably sees you hanging out with the people he takes to be that, and he's not seeing you doing it in a way that is like in opposition to them. It's just kind of like sort of very friendly. It would be like to use an extreme example, this is an extreme example, like imagine if I like hung out with Nick Fuentes and I was really friendly. And,
what a wild example. When did that happen? A very wild situation. Yeah,
I was literally about to say that was my literal next
sorry sorry for taking your thunder. Sorry.
Yeah, I was about to say a little ironic since he used to do that. Although to his credit, he did axe him. He doesn't do that anymore. He just stopped doing that. But yes, a little ironic since he he's the one doing
but
that.
Myron is a raging anti-Semite. I mean, you must see this. Like he is wearing the he's making a farce of Jewish culture.
Again, no, I'm not again. I'm saying outright that I appreciate the irony.
Yeah.
Of my example. Now that all being said, he might still take a stronger view about like Democrat bashing, or he might just like
I know, but then doesn't that put into new light the Hassan stuff? Because much of his critique about Hassan stuff is like Hassan's a raging anti-Semite who would genocide Jews. Like I think Myron would genocide Jews before Hassan would. I'm dead serious about that. And I think that
okay, I maybe you're right. I don't know. I don't share that confidence. You could be right. But I have suspicions that it might be the other way around.
So you think Myron Gaines? Avi Myron,
Yeah.
Myron.
Oh, you can say that in a high pitched voice.
Sorry,
I can say the same thing with Ron Plaker. Like really, I don't know. I don't have a strong leaning, but would it surprise me if Hassan would genocide Jews before Myron? It wouldn't. It wouldn't surprise me if that's. But look, regardless. The point I'm trying to illustrate is just the sense of anger that someone might feel if they were to see something analogous like that. And whether he's being consistent or not is not really the sort of question I'm answering. It's just conveying that sort of I'm just answering your question of what my suspicion is what's going on. And my answer is I suspect that's the sort of feeling he gets when he sees you in friendly context hanging out with those sorts of people.
But then I would also distinguish someone like Crystal Ball.
But I also wait, just to answer your second point, because your second part of your question was, is there something deeper? I suspect there probably is. I suspect that it's more than that. There probably is some personal thing going on with there may be. I suspect I could be wrong. There might be some sort of personal backstory here that you two just need to work out on the personal level. I don't know. That might be fueling this, even though if it's not the topic. So so to answer your question, my again, totally speculation is that it's some combination of both.
Okay. But would you, in your mind, like, let's say that take me, your impression of me. Now I want you to, this is the new Dr. Avi. This is, therapist Avi or whatever. I'm sitting on your couch and I'm like, and you've listened to me in all my political context.
Mm-hmm.
I just want right by the world. I just want people to I just want the Democrats to win. And
I know you do. Oh, I believe you.
Yeah.
I believe you do.
And so when I go on like Crystal Ball's show and I hear her bash Trump, it brings me great glee. When I see her go on talk shit about Trump on Piers Morgan, it brings me great joy. And I want to see more of it. And I want to go on these different platforms and say, hey, this is like, we need to all gather together for this one common thing. And maybe you disagree that it's the right strategy or approach. Maybe you think that Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske are tankies, which I don't agree, and I don't. But by my usage of the term tankie, and I think what the standard economic definition of tankie, I don't think that would factor in. But why not? If you're being good faith, I don't think there's a version of this where you're like, Pisco is going to these shows because ultimately he's grifting. He's ultimately just trying to just ingratiate himself with lefties as opposed to continue on his mission to make Democrats based as fuck. And I just don't know. Like, what is your sense? Is it your sense that I'm going on these shows? Yeah.
No, I don't even think. I don't know. I'm not even convinced at this point that he thinks like you're grifting or that you're like going to ingratiate. I think if I had to speculate again, just speculation, I suspect he probably thinks he just got caught up with these things, like caught up with these nefarious people, and for maybe even be very well be good intentions, the sort of intentions you've just listed to me. But it still causes, like, if I saw someone with good intentions get caught up, hanging out with Nick Fuentes or something, I probably would, feel similarly. I'd be like, all right. Well,
people say that about you, Avi. You voted for Trump.
Oh, I know. No, I'm not. And I would understand them. Yes. And I understand their age. You know what I say all the time to these people? I'm like, listen, if you're here to just vent at me, I'm here. I'm here for you. I actually understand why you're angry that I got caught up with that. Like, okay, I'm here. I will listen. I don't pretend that they're irrational or something or for getting frustrated at that. I understand their frustration.
Oof. Hey, this was a good combo, man. I just that conversation was a shit show, and I don't know. So overall, your take. Do you think both of us went into?
My
Yeah.
overall take is I think you guys should have a conversation where you actually communicate with each other and clear up semantics. Because like I honestly like that entire conversation did basically without clearing anything up, that basically like added almost zero epistemic import into like what you guys even do or don't disagree on. And yeah, it was basically the only way I would ever recommend watching that debate is if you were like entertained by that sort of shit show and you just want to have it as background noise while doing something else, while eating popcorn or something. Like that's
Well, I'll ask you. Did you enjoy it?
No.
You hated
it was like it led me to make tweets and everything. Like no.
Okay.
No, this is absolutely the sort of debate you don't want to have. That I don't enjoy. It leads me to have these sorts of long conversations.
You almost said intervention there.
Yeah, intervention with you guys, and that all the way to it's almost 2:30 a.m. in the morning now. Like, no, this was terrible. This was horrible, Pisco. Never do that sort of thing again. Clear up the semantics next time.
I'll give it. I was trying to. Maybe I wasn't trying hard enough. I was trying to get some clarity on what the disagreement was. Maybe that isn't clarifying the semantics. Maybe
I think what you guys need. I will say this again. I think you guys need a moderator that is able to bridge both of you two together. Yeah, I think you guys. I think that would be very helpful.
I think what's stopping me from like being like, yeah, that's a great idea is the level. I think the lack of charity. People want to talk about my charity to Hassan. I think the lack of charity given to me. Maybe you think this is all about me, but like that to me.
I agree with you. I think that's why you need the moderator, because you guys are both assuming the worst in each other. That's exactly what a type of moderator that can bridge that is for. The only other option is for you to radically change your approach to each other, and that is very easy to not happen.
I appreciate you, Avi. You motherfucker.
Either one of those two things. Either you got a moderator capable of bridging that gap and translating each other's language to each other, or just changing your approach to each other so that you can speak the same language. Because if neither of those things happen, I don't know how you two communicate with each other. Like that's just it. That's my take.
I appreciate that. I think that I am like I think one of the reasons I took it so personally, just in my human moment here, one of the reasons I took it personally is I feel like putting aside all of the bullshit, that there was a level of charity not granted to me in the course of my review of the Vanguard stuff, in the course of my analysis when people brought up like this thing of Hassan. Like, I have no problem saying Hassan now that I've seen the clips being a Marxist-Leninist. I have no problem saying Hassan bad. I've never had a problem saying that. But the lack of charity, like when I'm examining that Hassan's claim about re-education camps, I'm actually curious your take, where he literally says I'm against re-education camps, and really, in order to get to the point that he is in favor of it, you'd have to bring in all this other statements in context, right? And I was just examining like the lack of charity.
Is it a sort of thing like in principle he is for re-education camps, but you would have to wand away a lot of pragmatic considerations?
No. So basically, he was asked. Ethan asked him like, so what would happen if like there's a social system and all of a sudden you want to they want to like go back? How would it basically reinforce itself and persist? And it sounds like, well, basically the same way capitalist things persist, education, and then Ethan's like re-education. And it sounds like re-education, certainly. I know that word is triggering. And they're like, re-education camps, like, no, not like that. Like, it wouldn't be like China. It wouldn't be like this and that. And, what we would have is just like there's a terrorism nexus and there's, this is ideological crime, whatever he said, right? I'm not trying to represent one way or the other. But basically the way he said is he's denying explicitly. Now, you can have reasons that you disbelieve this, but he's denying that it's like what Ethan is implying. And he's
not his openly stated position.
Correct.
Trying to stop.
And I was just analyzing whether the literal words in context meant that or not. And I think even now, people are saying, I had this one woman from New Zealand tweet, and she's like, I heard it. I've seen enough. Based on Steven's interpretation of it. He's a full, and where Steven is bringing up all these other clips that weren't provided to me in the moment when I was asking for them. Clips where, where I was literally asking for the strongest evidence. He's bringing it all up, like, you think Pisco's nowhere? Like, and I have this woman tweet at me, like, I've seen enough. He's a complete tankie apologist. And in that moment when I'm just examining the basically that statement in context where he's literally saying the words, I'm not in favor of re-education camps the way that you're talking about, and me saying, hey, these words don't mean this thing, and not refuting that, I think you would acknowledge this distinction, that given other baggage, he could be signaling that, right? Which I don't refute and never have refuted. They jump to lack of charity. They're like, oh, he must think that Hassan's good. He must be trying to get in with Hassan. That's what they're saying. And so why would I engage when every time I try, there's like this instant reaction, this negativity, this lack of charity to what my position is, and constant like huge amount of toxicity. And it starts to get me to open my eyes and be like, wait, is this what it's like for other people?
So here's another take I'm going to give you. So I gave you one take. I'm going to give you another take. Maybe there's some sort of personal thing going on in the background here that's motivating this, even if it's not the topic. And, so in addition to my prior suggestions of either getting a moderator bridge this or approaching this in a way you can understand, you can translate each other or to whatever degree there is any personal animosity between you two over any personal things, maybe make an attempt to resolve that. Or otherwise, then maybe barring that, then you won't get anywhere for personal reasons, if that's what's going on.
Avi, I really appreciated your input today. I know it's late for you. I appreciate your commentary, even though you're a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
This is the virtue signal. No, listen, I appreciate our conversations. I really do. And I just want to give you flowers. I've learned a lot talking to you and Isaac that I consider like very valuable. And I do appreciate that. And I felt the same way for DGG and Destiny for the longest time, that I really valued a lot of what I've learned from people in that community, from Steven himself. But I'm going to be honest, I did not expect what I take to be the lack of charity. And like for you, I would never in a million years would think that you would say of me the kind of like, or I think have the lack of grace that you, I think, show now for Steven in this conversation. And also for me, I'm going to be honest, like that to me, it's not, I don't like it. I hate that. And I think that it's not fair.
I gave you a take. That's why I gave you a take. Because if that's what's going on, then there might be some kind of personal thing going on. I don't know if that's with the Pixie stuff or with the this J person or whatever, J Stirk or I don't even know who he is. That person.
Justickle.
Yeah. I think he calls what is it, Jew Stalker that he calls him? I don't know. But,
oh God. Wait, is that what it's from?
I think.
He's a
J Stalker or whatever.
Jew
I don't know.
Stalker?
Calls him Jew Stalker, doesn't he? Isn't that like his
I think I knew
form?
this. Wait. I debated Jay Justickle on a bunch of stuff in the past. But like the thing is, I don't travel in these snark circles. It's the same thing with like, sorry, I know that I'm keeping you. Same thing with like the H3 stuff. People like, he's still bought on the H3 snark. That's not my MO, baby. I don't spend my time doing the snark stuff. I try to stick. I'm honest, like I'm not trying to throw my editor on the bus. I reviewed that lawsuit because one, I have an interest in copyright, but also that like, and it was my decision, but like he brought it to my attention. I reacted to it. I gave him my genuine take, and people assume that I have these associations with snark communities or with Kiwi farms. I have no association there, but it doesn't help them from like making that connection and assuming that I have all these connections, or like that I've never talked to Hassan, never talked to Denims, never talked to Mike from PA, never at all. So yeah, I hear you that they might assume that I have these connections and I have these different associations that are more nefarious, but I don't think I do. I think everything I do is out in the open, and like I am open, like I'm going on these shows where you can see me. I didn't even invite the Vanguard, right? I had the Vanguard on for my show, but to Live and Learn, I didn't invite the Vanguard. So I don't know. I just feel it's kind of, I'm open about what I do. I'm open about my beliefs. I'm open about my purpose. I don't know if it's responsive to anything you're saying, but I hear what you just said. In other words,
I think you're very genuine. I think you're a very genuine person. I think your intentions are in the right place. I don't disagree with any of those sentiments. I just think I think I don't know what it is that's going on. I don't know how much of it is a personal thing that's preventing clearing semantics up. I don't know if it's just a lack of trying to clear semantics up. I don't know if it's or how much of that it is, or if there's if it was a lack of a appropriate moderator. I don't know, but whatever it is, I think those are the candidate explanations. But
Appreciate
either
it.
way, that's the thing. Okay, and just wrapping up. Because this is what I don't know for whatever reason was the most interesting thing to me was that the point about healthcare for whatever reason I'm not sure why that is. Yeah, so just wrap. So I think in terms of social so social single payer healthcare being socialist. Maybe some esoteric argument can make that it's a socialist policy in some sense on a standard economic definition if payment itself or funding itself is a means of production or like a distribution of a good itself or a product itself or something like that. I'm not sure how widely accepted such a notion would be among economists, but if it is, then in some sense it is. If it's not, then obviously it's not. It wouldn't work that way. But broadly speaking, I think that when people are using that to describe it, they're referring to like the healthcare system broadly. And so
you would say it's not socializing the means of production in the sense of healthcare.
Yeah, in the sense of
yeah,
broadly in the sense of healthcare.
I think I would agree with. I think I'm willing to say I agree with that. That it's certainly not socializing healthcare. It's at most socializing insurance, if that is a standard notion.
It's socializing some sort of mechanism.
Yeah.
Or
look at me, good faith.
Yeah, socialize some sort of mechanism in providing funding for healthcare.
Separate, of course. I want to just make sure people understand from common usage and whether our intuitions on that. Fair.
Sure. Yeah. Of course. Okay. Of course. And then there's an important distinction between the NHS and single payer. NHS ownership of the majority of the hospitals, or the vast majority. That's the key. So again, key difference. That really just straightforwardly falls under like standard socialist definitions. Like they just own the means of production of healthcare.
Would you say police? Police is by that vision. Police is socialized policy. Or did you just put police in a separate category because of historical reasons or something?
Yeah. So, well,
military.
I'd have to think more about it. Like if
they're doing services like a doctor would, they're providing life-saving aid.
I have to think about how because it's a service. I will admit I'm a little bit rusty on my Marxist readings, but if I'm not mistaken, Marx I think did make a distinction between socially necessary labor time versus as far as like how goods are. And I don't think I'm not sure how he would classify things of the service industry in those senses versus like.
Oh, no. But then it's like, then what are we talking about then?
I don't. So the answer is I'm not sure. Like, I'm not making.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I have heard this from Marxists. So I'm not like making it up either.
I know, but if there's like a categorical exception where services aren't considered, or some subset of services aren't considered means of production, then I just think that we have a huge issue because most of healthcare, or at least the value of it, right? It's not pharmaceuticals. It's fucking services.
Well, yeah, a lot of it. Yeah. So then the question would be like, okay, well, how much of that would be even if healthcare? Are you just classifying that as a different service? And maybe you are. There certainly would be a lot of product in healthcare.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
And surgical instruments and all sorts of devices and So pleading a lot of ignorance on that, but
yeah,
sure. So in terms of like the state owning like the means of payment of production in terms of the police. Yeah, so I think that to whatever degree that is like a production, like if that's a means of production,
because it could be privatized. Like you could have private security enforcement.
Yeah, so I think like, but yeah, so I think that is like a public good, but I think like everyone just accepts that it should be a public good. So I think people are, I think it's like, yeah, that we socialize a number of things. If to whatever degree that is like a means of production, then yeah, we
But
socialize it.
then it's
And
like, well, then because Connor's invitation to absurdity, or his what do you guys call it in the business? Um,
'cause I don't think, hold on, well, just one second, because I
yeah.
don't think that the focal point of debate here is that like any and all, like to whatever degree we define it this way, then any and all socialism would just be like off the or should be off the table.
No,
I think
I
if
agree with that. I agree with that. But all I'm saying is Connor has this what's it called when it's like I take that to be the absurdity or reductio ad absurdum, right? That shit. So his whole thing, or I don't know what we call it, but his whole dunk is that, oh, you're just saying government is when, or socialism is when the government does stuff. And the example you use, like, oh, yeah, socialism is when police. But if you're acknowledging that public ownership of the means of production is police, and that kind of like, it takes the sting out of how ridiculous of a notion it would be that someone could think that, public police, public military is a socialist policy, and therefore, I don't know what the conclusion is there, but like it just seems like if we're acknowledging that police is socialist, is it that crazy?
yeah, so well, to be clear, it's like it's a caveat. It's like, okay, so to whatever degree that the government does own the police, and to whatever degree that is a means of production, or distribution of a good, or or that sort of thing, then yes, I'm like I wouldn't use the dunk. Socialism is when government uh, does things.
Yeah.
What I would say is that what I would say and accept though is, well, actually, socialism is not when government does things. More aptly, it's when it owns the means of it or the public owns means of production. And to whatever degree that the police are a means of production and they own it, then I would just accept socialism in that case. And that's just the area we should have socialism. It's just like the clear point of contention, like this debate is so back riddled with like all this notion, like, oh, we can't have social, we have social versus, like, no, like the whole point of contention here is where we should socialize things and where we shouldn't.
Yeah, that's why I feel like I'm crazy, because like now it just seems like we're talking about labels, and like let's just talk about what we want to talk about. What we want to talk about is there are a certain group of bad people who we don't like, but we agree we don't like them, and so then, oh yeah,
so but just finishing up on this,
yeah.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, so if we dial all that in, then you sure, like the police would be socialist, and they should be then. So as with the firefighters and the roads and like what all the things we recognize as public goods, if they to whatever degree they are means of production and are owned by the government, then yes, that would just be socialist.
Okay.
And that would just be things that should be socialist. But but that's a very different question than asking, like, is single payer
It's
socialist?
socialist policy.
So, yeah, because that is specifically referring to not those things. That is specifically referring to the thing where there is a debate and there is a contention over whether we should have government ownership or not, and it doesn't directly invoke government ownership.
No, totally, totally agree on that. Yeah, I agree there, but yeah, I guess the broader point is, who the fuck cares about this? Like the semantic, like I almost would grant the semantics and just be like, well, what do you want us to do, right? Like, what do you want us to do? And do you really want us to kick out Econoboy?
Be very clear with each other. I want you guys to, my ultimate goal here, again, I'm going to say it again. I want to, when I see a debate, like I'll tell you, this is my frustration. When I see a debate you guys have frustrates me because I just, it's like I want you guys to get there. I want you guys to at least understand each other and translate each other properly so that you can so I can enjoy a proper, interesting debate. And it's like
This is about your content. This is about your content. It didn't scratch the itch.
It's like this sneeze that you're about to have and you can't get there. You're almost understanding each other, but you're not there. It's like you almost get to sneeze and it keeps going away. You can't actually complete the sneeze. That's what it feels like watching this shit. So I would like you guys to understand each other and communicate, translate each other. To whatever degree you have personal stuff, maybe clear that up. To whatever degree in moderate pursuit, clear that up. Okay. Now it is 2:40 a.m. in the morning, and I have work.
Hey,
tomorrow.
Thank you so much for taking the time, though. I really appreciate this decompress, and I think that it definitely brought some amount of clarity and maybe some things to think about.
Yeah, shoot me the link. Do you mind if I upload this? to
Not
my
at
channel?
all. Not at all. You have to completely within your rights to cross upload.
Okay, it's not gonna like the copyright infringement.
No, I don't do the automatic thing because guess
and
what? I care about the
You
React
didn't-
community.
And you registered? Did you register?
I did not
this,
pre-register this specific conversation with you in the minutes before we actually decided to do it. So, but yes, yeah, you have full permission, and you guys, and you know what? I'm gonna give a limited license to everybody for this stream only. It's not broader than that. You guys can, if you want to, react to this thing and not even worry about fair use. Okay, so for Avi has full rights. Avi, you
on your chair. Put your chairs on, guys.
yeah. but yeah, thank you so much, Avi, and we'll talk again soon. Okay.
You have a good night.
All right, later. I might need to do another dark gothic morning stream, just to make sure I hit my schedule. I don't know, man. I feel like Avi was super charitable to Destiny here. It's fucking crazy. In my opinion, you guys have your own reactions. If it's fair use, fair, it's not really. Yeah, agreed. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to worry about fair use in the sense that it's okay if you have unfair use of this particular stream. I'm giving everyone who watches this full permission for this specific stream and only this specific stream to do unfair uses of it. Okay? But, okay. On the docket. Tomorrow, I think we're going to try to suss out with Jola our tech issues so we can actually do some conversations with some conservatives. Hopefully there'll be more productive conversations. And certainly this Friday, you guys get to see my appearance on Tim Pool. And hopefully that will bring the disparate sides of the people who sometimes enjoy watching my content together. Okay. Is there any other issues for now? Yeah, went on Tim Pool. I did have eye drops. I put them in earlier. I have a persistent issue. I'm trying to fix my eyes. Sorry if it bothers you. The Tim Pool video should come out Friday, but it's contingent on them releasing it. And once they release it, we'll make a little edit of it. But I am pretty tired. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch the stream. Like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah. And I just want to say a shout out to podcast co-host, Live and Learn folks. You guys are my boys. I love Hutch. I love Econoboy. I love Josiah. You guys are my dogs. Shout out to Blonde Philosophy in the chat, and also shout out to Aaron, who I think has been a great co-host. I really just enjoy doing that segment where you kind of see a little bit of my personality, see a little bit of, like a funnier side. Like today we did this bit about like the countdown to saying like all lives matter or whatever, which I thought was funny. And so I have no apologies about doing the show with Aaron. I continue to love my co-host and Live and Learn, and it's nothing but positive thoughts and feelings to those people. And so, yeah, much love to all of you and to the Peace Corps. Hopefully, you guys have a good night. Peace.